Concord Municipal Light Plan to order. We're meeting again on Zoom this morning per Governor Baker's executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law issued in March of last year because of the coronavirus pandemic. This meeting is being recorded. If you have any questions, please use the raised hand function. Please note that we will not be using the chat or the Q&A function in this meeting. When it's time to ask your questions, please turn your video on, as it will help us put the name to the face of those who are engaged with us in this meeting. If you dialed in by phone and would like to raise your hand, you can do this by raising *9. And if you dialed in to unmute, you can press *6 and *6 again when you want to mute. Hopefully those little tidbits work. And if not, maybe we have some troubleshooting. Yes, Gordon.
Who is the clerk today?
We are now going to talk about that.
Okay.
I think we need a permanent clerk at this point. It's now 2021. It has been tradition that the second year a person is on the board, that person becomes the clerk. We don't have one of those this year. We have two fairly new members who have, and an assortment of older members. So my question for you is, who will volunteer to clerk for this 2021?
Can I raise a question about this?
Sure.
Alice?
Yeah,
I just want to observe that, number one, the minutes are extensive, the ones that I've read, and that's very time consuming. Number two, obviously they're recorded, so people can hear the entire transcript. I realize that we are bound by the open meeting laws to have minutes, actual minutes, but I think that we could make very short shrift of these minutes. Propose that in the future, whoever is doing them is really should just be recording, although I applaud anybody who wants to write a very extensive narrative, but just be covering the most decisions, votes, things like that, in a way recognizing the fact that the archaism of these minutes is not functionally that important anymore. So, and then having said that, I would also, with complete deference to you, Dave, suggest that perhaps as was the case in the FinCom, which admittedly paid an outside person, that maybe competent staff who are sophisticated staff could take on that function, because this is a group of volunteers. So I'm just obviously making the point that the minutes burden seems functionally not as relevant as it used to be. And secondly, wondering if there are ways for us to get around it. Obviously, I am not interested in doing extensive minutes, period. So that's that. I've done my share of those, and I don't know that I would if I had to step up, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a clerk. We put the minutes together for the clerk and then they review them. I don't think the board should not have a clerk. So I don't fully agree with you, Pamela, and that's okay. But I think I think we need to have a permanent clerk, because it's important for my staff that works with the clerk to, every year it changes and everyone wants something a little different. And that's always been a challenge. But to go back and forth between people is really difficult.
Yep. No, I'm absolutely not suggesting no clerk. I absolutely agree with you. We need to have the imprimatur with the voice of the board in those minutes, and we need to have ultimate control and responsibility for their accuracy and everything. So I'm not saying that, Dave. I'm just saying something a little bit different.
All right, I think I saw a couple of hands up. We shouldn't spend too much time on this conversation. It is, but I should note, not the first time this conversation has been had with among the board and with Dave and staff. For those, we do have a staff person, Karen, who does the minutes for us, and the clerk's job is to review, enhance it, and assure accuracy of the minutes that are provided. And I know I've worked with Karen and has gone back and forth on how much detail we need. And I'm a highlights kind of person because I always thought that you can always go back and watch the whole thing, but people have different needs for what they put out there. And I think the clerk has some flexibility to decide how much needs to be in there in terms of details. Gordon.
Just in defense of Karen, these minutes really required light editing on my part. And the couple of attempts that I made to improve them, actually, in conversation with Karen afterwards, realized that I shouldn't have made some of the changes. So they're actually pretty good. And I can understand why a staff member would feel cautious about truncating anything, because that moves into judgment. And then that puts a little bit more of a heavy load on the board member, the clerk, to then editorialize and decide what's worth preserving for the future and what's not. And in prior conversations, we've talked about this as a board, and there's been the sense that, well, in a way it establishes kind of the context for some of the decisions. And and honestly, when I pushed these out on Sunday, it was quicker for me to take what Karen had written that was very, very detailed than to try and spend a lot of time paring it down. But, you know, if that's the direction that the board wants to go in terms of having lighter, shorter minutes, more high level, then that would probably fall on the board member, the clerk.
Well, that makes, first of all, I'm thrilled that Karen has been identified as the person who, I was of the impression in a way that when I heard you, Gordon, say, well, how do I exactly say this when you were taking notes? That's a distracting thing for a board member to be in. One of the reasons I object, and I don't want to spend time on it, is that we then are distracted from being actively engaged in the decision-making and discussion. And so it's really hard to do both. If Karen, and I'm thrilled to hear that she's doing this, if she does extensive notes and we can just sort of cut and paste just decision points, that's fine with me. But I'm thrilled that basically it's the job of the staff. I'm very concerned, given the complexity of the stuff we do here, that if I were the clerk, for example, and had to spend a lot of time during a meeting thinking about clerking, it would really reduce my ability to participate. That's all. So anyway,
I think that's a good point, Pam. I just want to add that when I was clerk last year, I would routinely review the video to make sure I remembered what was said and who said it, and make sure that the minutes reflected. And Karen was pretty good on getting, the highlights of those meetings. And she and I had talked about how much detail and just highlights. So the work, it is still a lot of work for the clerk, but it's not as if you're starting from scratch. Karen does the big first cut on it all.
Great, Karen.
Brian?
Though I generally, as many, don't like doing clerking, I'm willing to clerk because Karen is supporting it and helping out. And to exactly your last point, the video gives a great record of what was said. So yeah, until the end of next town meeting, I'm willing to clerk.
Excellent.
Well, thank you, everyone, for indulging me. Thank you. And thank you,
Brian.
Karen. I just want to thank Karen for what you've done. I mean, it certainly changes my my pitch here a lot.
All right.
So Alice, could we get someone to make a motion?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do I have a motion for a clerk for the 2021 year?
So I'd like to make a motion that Brian become clerk for the remainder of the 20.
And a second.
Year.
And I have Gordon as a second. Roll call vote. Pam?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
Can Brian vote on this? Yes, I think Brian can vote on this one.
Yes.
And Alice, yes. So congratulations. Thank you for stepping up. These minutes and these meetings will now be indelible in your brain. Take it from me.
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right. Thank you. So let's just take a look at our meeting schedule. Our next meeting is for February 10th, and the one after that is March 10th. Do you see any conflicts for you before we go forward to make sure the next 2 months at least are conflict free for your attendance?
All set.
All right,
Yeah.
great. All right, let's go move to the director's update.
Okay. So got quite a pretty big list here. I'm going to try and get through as timely as I can. So for heat pumps, after interviewing 8 candidates, Abode Energy has hired 2 part-time heat pump coaches on CMLP's behalf. They're both actually Concord residents. Jeff Tish and Ethan Heberman. They'll both work about total of 50 hours combined. And they'll be trained by Abode's heat pump specialist. They'll spend some time working with CMLP staff to publicize the coaching and service in the community. Abode is now maintaining a list of participants, air source heat pump contractors for the customers, and they can request quotes from the installers on the list, knowing if they have tracked a record of success and customer satisfaction. Customers are not required to use the contractor list that we have, but it's there for them to try and help them out. Abode is also managing a new assurance process for air source heat pumps projects that receive our rebate in order to improve heat pump sizing and installation. We are revamping our air source heat pump rebate webpage to highlight the contractor list and Q&A process, and plan to add additional information about coaching services shortly. Our air source heat pump rebate program, which has been available to residential customers, is now available for businesses as well. We've also been working with Energy New England to complete our transition to a new online rebate portal intended to make it easier for our customers to apply for rebates and for E&E and CMLP to process them. Our website now directs customers to the portal for LED heat pump water heaters, weatherization air source heat pumps, and EV and level 2 applications. So in December, the town decided to build a temporary structure at the high school. And the structure is going to be used for a vaccine clinic and testing clinic for COVID-19. So we ended up having to shift gears and spend a significant amount of time on that. Fortunately, we're able to engineer and construct a line extension. We used some abandoned conduits that formerly fed the bus depot. And then we installed 4 poles, and we were able to energize the structure with power last week. So it's up and running. The clinic is really following the state guidelines on who gets vaccinated first. Starting tomorrow, first responders, police and fire are set up for clinic. It's going to go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I believe. And then, next phase, but it was a pretty big lift for us. And fortunately, with our staff and team, we're able to get it done and get it done by the deadline. So we're pretty happy about that.
Quick question. The line workers, do they qualify as first responders?
So right now they're in phase 2. I personally believe they should be in phase 1 because they are first responders, in my opinion. But right now they're in phase 2, so we're following the state guideline on that, and that's the tricky piece. But
yeah, I understand both sides of that, and it's unfortunate we don't have enough vaccines to go around as quickly as we'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would like to be able to get my whole team vaccinated,
Yeah.
you know, but that's coming. And the good news is we have this site set up, and it's been a great effort by the community, the team. We really, you know, worked together and got it done. And, you know, I think just looking at the time frame that we had to get it done in and how we had to shift gears, and, you know, it's the same structure that we used in West Concord for the fire station when we had the fire. And the difference here was we just had to connect it with power. This time we had to wire the inside of the building and that sort of thing. So I identified that fairly early on, and were able to get it done. So it was a little bit different, but it was a great job by the staff to get everything wrapped up. And we'll see.
Dave, it's supporting multi-town,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the surrounding communities are part of the first wave of vaccinations. And, you know, I believe there's 435 over the next 3 days vaccines that are going to be implemented. And so
This is one of the benefits of having a municipal light plant, is this,
Right.
you know, flexibility and ability to get things done that are unexpected and not have the bureaucracy.
yeah, and you know, this site wouldn't be energized if there wasn't an MLP in Concord.
Right.
You know, one of the questions as a board member that I would ask is, you know, cost. What did it cost to, you know, do the line extension, and you know who's covering that? It was about $30,000 to do the line extension, and we are seeking FEMA reimbursement for that through the fire chief. So that cost should be covered. But that's what it costs. We didn't plan for it. So, you know, you guys just voted on the budget last meeting, and that wasn't in it. But hopefully, you know, it's a revenue neutral thing, and we get reimbursed for it. And that's the plan.
And staffing, is it staffed by only Concord? I think it's a 5-town consortium. Are there rotating staffing requirements? How is that working?
So my understanding is it is a rotating thing. It's kind of through the communities that are involved. I don't have all the specific details, so I don't want to speak too much on the staffing for the vaccine staff, but I believe it's from multiple towns.
Quite an effort.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I have more.
Okay.
Cooperative Research Center is our third party call center for after hours outages. That system went live last week, and outages can be reported by calling 844-732-1287. It's a toll-free number. So we're excited that that's live. We really think that's going to help us during storms and after hours outages, and it's going to, you know, certainly take some burden off of the police dispatch. So that's a very positive thing.
Dave, what is that exactly? Is that so people can call in if they have an outage, or what?
Yeah, it's a call center, and basically if someone has an outage, they'll call that number and they'll notify our staff. It's pretty comprehensive, but overall, you know, the problem that we had is during major events, dispatch would be overloaded. Our call center at the light plant would be overloaded. We couldn't handle it. And, you know, it formalized a number of complaints. And so this is supposed to help with that. So.
Well, what I wanted to get to on this is that a few weeks ago, there was a 20-minute outage in my neighborhood, which was quickly corrected. And I think I asked what the problem was. And you said there was some kind of a fix that had to be done, some emergency fix or something. I'm wondering, is there a way to sort of do a phone call immediately to people, or I don't know, is there a way to get the word out immediately when you know that you're going to be shutting something down, or maybe you do that and I missed it, but
Yeah,
Is there a way to,
yeah, it's really difficult when you have an emergency situation like that to get notification out to the customers that we have to take an outage. You know, in this scenario you're talking about, if we hadn't taken the outage, we would have had a much larger outage involving, you know, thousands of customers. So we don't really use the system for things of that nature often. And in many scenarios where we have to take an emergency outage, there's not enough time to get notification out, which is difficult for the customers. The fortunate thing is you know, it was a short scenario to repair it, but I hear what you're saying. It's just it's not easy.
Dave,
yeah,
are you-
I respect that a lot. I just wonder if there are economies that could be enjoyed if you ever were able to say, because a number of people I'm sure called in not knowing whether they should be letting it, you know, I don't know, it's all end of my point, but I think I'm really happy about how it got resolved quickly, but it would maybe save you time later if you could be able to let people know who are affected, but you know that better than I do, so enough.
Okay, Wendy, then Gordon.
just a quick question, Dave. So in an emergency after hours, are you reverting the calls from your call center to this new number? Or
Yeah,
it's
we're
not the
at-
same one?
Yeah, we're asking everyone to call this number. It's on the website.
It'd be nice to redirect your phone to that site so that people don't have to, oh, I got to find that emergency number.
And that's something that might be possible when the phone system upgrade's done.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of new features that are coming.
Yep.
So, you know, if we can do that, great.
Yep.
But, you know, I think it's like anything. I mean, we have a call center for broadband and they do some troubleshooting for us off hours. And, you know, this is more of a transition to that style. And I think it's ultimately gonna work well for us.
But it's
So-
not a full after hours. It's an emergency situation after hours, right?
Correct. And if we have an outage during the day that's significant, you know, they can jump on and help us out as well. So it's certainly, you know, I know you guys haven't been in the office during an outage and it's chaotic. The phones ring nonstop and it's one after the next. And so anything we can do to improve that with our customers is welcomed. And, you know, I think it's a big step for us, big change. So we'll see how it goes. We do know there'll be hiccups along the way, you know, as there are with anything. So we'll continue to evolve as we, you know, find things that we didn't think of or scenarios come up that we hadn't planned for, and then we'll adjust accordingly.
844-732-1287. Put it in your phone directory.
723.
Oh, 723.
Oh, 7-2. I wrote 732 also.
Well, I may have said 732 the first time. It's possible.
Change my phone quick before I call it.
Nice.
So Gordon, go ahead.
Just briefly, it may stick that phone number perhaps in the Smart Hub app.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that Smart Hub puts up a notification on my cell phone when the bill is ready. There could be some opportunities there for using Smart Hub as a platform for targeted messaging for like just the people that are going to get hit by that temporary outage or maybe townwide, and also to tell people what's going on when there's a major outage.
So I have three quick comments. One, it would be nice to do a bill insert with this number on it that lists the broadband emergency number and other town emergency numbers, whether it be fire or police. That way, even do that on a magnet so people can stick it on their fridge. The other was, there used to be a map to show where outages were. It was like see it, click it, fix it. It was a town app. I don't know if that's still being used or if that's gone away.
So see, click, fix never had our outage map, and we aren't using that any longer. But
Okay.
an outage map that is on our website. If you go to it, you can just click outage map and it'll bring you up to zones and you can see how many people are out and that sort of thing.
All right. And the third thing I wanted to mention is with AMI, those meters should be able to report back or not. be acknowledged that they're not reporting when there's an outage, so that that system could be an automated way for you to know where meters have stopped responding, so you can see where the outages are. And maybe that can be linked to a map on your website so that people could see where outages are happening.
Yeah, we like to look at it from a general area type of thing. We don't want to show customers that this one house is out.
Well, you could
Purposes.
that information could be used to inform residents of areas with outages.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be granular, but it is a way to get the call centers and people out of the process and reduce the call volume by answering people's questions of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think, it's a good point, and it kind of brings me to the next piece of my report that, we're nearing completion with Smart Hub outage reporting. So customers going to be able to report outages using Smart Hub. And, as I mentioned at the last regular meeting, we have over 3,500 customers on Smart Hub. So that's going to help as well. And to Brian's point, when we get to the smart meter piece, that's going to automatically report for us, and it's going to help us in that regard too. So, moving forward. On Friday, Karen distributed acronyms and definitions document that was requested. Document's pretty lengthy. I'm sure you guys have looked at it. If you think we're missing something in there, you're probably right. So if you have additions and comments and questions, please let us know. But I think it's a pretty comprehensive list, and we'll just build on that. We put this together years ago, and so it was more of an update than anything, taking some stuff that doesn't apply anymore and then updating it with new things. So any questions, like I said, let us know. We're working on the annual report. We just took the picture at the start of the meeting of the board, so we'll have a 2021 Zoom picture for the times. But that's got to be completed by the end of the month, and we're working on it. So,
Great.
One of the things that I had planned to bring to this meeting, and you guys probably noticed is not on the agenda, analog meter policy. We weren't able to get that done for this meeting. Basically we shifted gears, like I said earlier, on the vaccine site, and the plan is to bring a policy for the board to discuss and potentially vote on in February. So apologize for that, but we had to shift gears, and not a lot we could do about that.
And do you have estimates coming on costs related to offering that service?
We have the next agenda item, which is about AMI. And maybe we can have the whole conversation in one.
Yeah. No, I'm not prepared, Brian, at this point. We didn't get to spend much time on that at all. So that would be more of a February discussion.
And Dave and I did talk during the week, and it seemed it was not a wise thing for us to go and install meters without having the guiding policy from the board saying how we will install, how we purchase, how we decide, how it all gets done. So first step is getting a good policy in place that we'll vote on in February, and then we can move towards meeting the request of citizens who have been requesting it.
My request was about the cost of calibrating those meters, the back end costs of having this program, so we could establish a policy.
Yeah, we didn't have enough time.
That's fine. We'll talk about it in February. Thank you.
Yeah, that's I appreciate that. Tree trimming. Our crew started trimming. We're focusing on areas north of Route 2. Last year, we hired a contractor that did Route 2. We don't have a targeted completion date on that because when we trim woods, they often get pulled off of that project and have to take care of other things. So, we're just going to plug away at it and, go from there. But the process has started. It's the right time of year to trim. There's no leaves up there. It's much cleaner. So we'll keep plugging away. We are in the process of putting specs together for a new hybrid bucket truck. And we plan on purchasing that in 2021. This new truck will replace truck 11, which, you know, it was one of a brand new truck when I got here. It's a 1992 International. So it's going to be a sad day when we retire it. The other thing that you may have noticed, and I just want to bring this up and be transparent. If you looked at your January bill, you may have noticed there's a care surcharge on the bill still. There's an oversight on our part and it didn't get removed. That will be removed for the February bills, but it was a little bit of an oversight and you know, not to make excuses, but you know, with staff working remote, it was one of the things that got overlooked, working off of spreadsheets and that sort of thing. So that surcharge is going to be removed. It should have been removed, but we did miss it.
Thank you.
And that's my update.
All right. Any questions before we move on to the agenda? The next agenda item, which is about the status of our AMI research and consulting acquisition. Seeing no questions, let's move to smart meters, where we are with our contract and the next steps.
Okay. We received 6 RFPs. They were due by January 7th. We received them from SL Serco, Weston and Sampson, Vast Solutions, Power Systems Engineering, eSource, and Lemire Hurt Consulting. We did have to reject one bid or one RFP. It was received yesterday at 11:40, so it didn't meet the deadline. And that was from Katama Technologies. So we got a good response. We're happy with 6 responses. Joe, Laura, Carol, and myself will be evaluating each non-price proposal, and we'll be meeting a week from Thursday to finalize the evaluations. It's a pretty big lift evaluating, so we're trying to stay on target, and I think we're in good shape for that. Once we've completed that, we'll then open the price proposals. Those are sealed, and those won't be until the non-price proposals are reviewed. Assuming we continue to stay on schedule, and we're putting every effort forward to do that, we'll schedule interviews for the week of February 25th, probably later in that week, but that's the plan. We'd like to bring in 2 or 3 vendors, depending on, you know, quality
Dave,
that we
I
look
think
at.
you mean,
What's that?
I think you mean January 25th.
Oh, did I say? Yeah.
I think for the
Thank
interviews
you,
in
Laura.
January 25th. You said February.
I did. Thank you. Yeah. So strike February and put January in there. But plan is to you know, hold those interviews and then hopefully make a recommendation to the town manager on a consultant to bring on board and kind of go from there. But like I said, so far, we had a good turnout with proposals. There are some really qualified vendors and hopefully they put good proposals together for us.
Great. Be good to see. I'm glad to see this moving forward.
Yeah, and we're trying to stay on our target dates, which, you know, is important to us. And, you know, it's going to take about 3 hours to review each one is my estimation based on my experience. You know, and then, you know, with the 4 of us getting together to kind of go through our evaluations together, you know, that's going to be a couple hours. And so there's quite a bit of work in a short period of time, but everyone's on board with doing it. And hopefully we'll be in a good position in 3 weeks, you know, with moving forward, we can stay on target. So.
Great. Glad to hear it. This is a long process. We've been waiting for this, so I'm happy to see that it's moving forward.
Yep.
Any questions from the board about the status of our AMI contracting? Seeing none, let's move on. The next part of our conversation is one that we will be looking at the CMLP incentive programs. It's time for us to look at what we provide incentives for, look at the uptake, look at the outcome. Is this working for us? What has it shown for our greenhouse gas reductions? What improvements need to be made if we're going to achieve our targets? So let's, I see Jan is here. I don't know if Dave, you're going to kick it off and Jan will do it, or how you want to proceed on talking to the board.
I'm going to share a screen and Jan is going to jump in here.
Great, thank you.
So let me
Welcome,
get
Jan.
my screen shared and we'll go from there.
I guess I should open up this to full screen so I can see it better. Make you guys smaller. Make that bigger. I got it.
Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Okay. This is a spreadsheet that I had put together a couple of years ago to compare how we're doing with the targets in the strategic plan that we developed a number of years ago. And I thought that it would be helpful here as a higher level overview, especially since the board was interested in uptake for our various programs. And so let's start with this. So one of our initiatives was fuel switching, focused on air and ground source heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. And you'll see that we had a very good year in 2018, our best year so far in terms of heat pump adoption for space heating. And that was the year that we carried out our Heat Smart campaign. In the next year was also a good year, and some of that adoption was carryover from 2018. Oops. Oh, sorry, did I do that? Okay.
No, that was me.
Okay. In 2020, our adoption has been lower. That has been affected by the pandemic. Activity shut down for a while. And as you heard from Dave during the update, we are really focusing on heat pump adoption this year. And in addition to the coaches, we also have a fairly extensive marketing plan. Energy New England developed a marketing toolkit for us, which includes logo, branding, social media posts, a trifold, social media messaging, and so on. Just a whole suite of tools that we can use to market heat pumps. We'll also be marketing the coaching service specifically, as Dave mentioned, and the coaches will be working with us to do that. And so we are really preparing this year to ramp up. We also have a full year's worth of outreach activities planned. Every month we have a suite of activities that we'll be carrying out to market both heat pumps and the coaching service. So that's where we stand with air and ground source heat pumps. And would you like to ask questions as we go along, or would you prefer that I kind of go through this first?
What is your preference? You're presenting. Do you want to present?
I would prefer if we go through it and ask questions at the end for
Okay.
timeliness.
Sure. Okay. As far as heat pump water heaters go, we have not done a lot of promotion of them. You'll notice some pretty big numbers here. These were the numbers in the strategic plan, and the consultants used a rule of thumb from Mass Save, in which Mass Save was seeing twice the adoption of heat pump water heaters that they were of air source heat pumps. And I think that was based on a different rebate regimen and didn't really apply to us. We had high hopes in 2018 because we were doing the Heat Smart campaign, and our air source heat pump, selected air source heat pump installer, had a plumbing business. And so we were hoping that they would promote heat pump water heaters as they promoted air source heat pumps. that was way too optimistic. And so for future years, we reduced our targets for heat pump water heater adoption. In 2019, that was still too optimistic. In 2020, we actually met our target of 8 installations. What we are looking at for the next year or so is that initially we're focused on air source heat pumps, working with a boat and with the coaches. That's where their expertise lies. But we do have plans as soon as we get the marketing going and the coaching service launched, is then to spend some time working with a boat and the coaches to decide how we're going to integrate promotion of both ground source heat pumps and heat pump water heaters into the program. So that's a bit of a later step. So hopefully in future years, we will be able to set higher targets and meet them for heat pump water heaters. So our next initiative is our electric vehicle initiative. And these, the cumulative strategic plan adoption targets, which the consultants set, were based on the idea that the state as a whole had a goal of something like 300,000 vehicles by 2030 or 2025. And the targets here are simply Concord's share of that, based on our population as a share of the state's population. And here are the cumulative adoption numbers. They've grown over time. However, the way that we determine how many vehicles are in Concord is based on a model that a volunteer had developed for us and which Laura now uses. And it's also based on information that we get from the assessor's office, which lags real time. And so we ask for the data every quarter. And even that data does not include all up-to-date information. Not only is it behind, but there's only once a year when retirements of vehicles are included in that information. So it's rare that we would really actually have completely accurate information about the number of vehicles in town, but based on a analysis that Laura did in September, and Laura, you should feel free to speak up if I'm not providing completely accurate information here. A analysis done in September that was based on 4 commitment periods, and there are 8 to 12 commitment periods per year. So this is partial information for 2020. We don't have full information for that year, for this year, for 2020 yet. Dave, do you want to move down a bit to the next one? Okay. So in the strategic plan, we also set targets for off-peak charging, since that was an important goal as we increase the number of vehicles in town. And the cumulative strategic plan target number is based on an idea that eventually we would like to see 95% of charging off peak. And so we've used 95% of the cumulative actual adoption number as a proxy target. We ultimately are aiming for 95% charging off peak once opt-out time of use rates are in place. That's not true yet. So these numbers, the target numbers are 95% of the actual adoption in the year. So if the actual adoption in 2018 was 315, our theoretical target was that 299 of those vehicles would be charging off peak. And that's the same for these other targets as well. The number here, the second row, is the enrollment in EV miles. And EV miles is our interim solution to encourage off-peak charging until opt-out time of use is in place. We launched EV Miles in 2018, and those numbers are cumulative as well. And so in 2020, we had 150 enrollees in EV Miles. However, there's an additional 39 people who have signed up for our opt-in time of use rate for EV charging. So altogether, 189 customer or EV owners, excuse me, have adopted some sort of off-peak charging or are using or responding to some sort of off-peak charging incentive program, either rates or EV miles. And so that is certainly not 95% of the target, but it does show you where we are. So this next chart is our EV level 2 rebate uptake. And this,
Sorry, Jan.
Yeah.
So can we look at the 189 figure and the 453 figure and say that about half of the EV owners are on some kind of night charging rate?
yes.
Let's try and hold questions on each individual. We've been asked to do it at the end of the full presentation. I appreciate you wanting to ask the question in the middle. I have lots of questions too. So
Clarifying
let's just go through and then we can keep a list of all the questions you have on each of these.
Yep.
We'll come back to them.
So the next chart is for our EV level 2 rebate program, and this provides a $250 rebate for customers who install an EV level 2 charging system at their home. We did not have any sort of targets for this in the strategic plan, so those aren't shown in this table. We launched this program in 2018, and you can see this is annual uptake, not cumulative, along with our target for 2021, which is based on the budgetary amount, the expenditure forecast for 2021. The final chart on this page is distributed solar, and the strategic plan consultants had recommended a fairly modest targets for increased solar over time. The community was interested in us keeping our rebate and continuing to promote distributed solar. We've kept our rebate. We've also added an MLP solar rebate program in which we match funds provided by DOER. So we have 2 solar rebates at this point. And the MLP solar rebate will continue to be offered through the middle of 2021. Our uptake for solar rebates, so we instead of using the modest figures that the consultants recommended, we have projected higher uptake. Primarily, for example, in 2019, this number 38 is based on uptake we had seen in sort of an average of prior years. The actual uptake in 2019 was really low because the SREC program ended and there was no program to replace it until actually, I'm sorry, that actually happened in 2018. And then the MLP solar program was slow to get going in 2019. And people were waiting for that larger incentive. It rolled out slowly. And so we had a low uptake in 2019. The uptake has certainly increased in 2020, almost reaching the target that we expected or projected despite the pandemic. So those are higher level looks at a number of our programs. In the strategic plan, we set out a goal of developing and implementing a comprehensive energy efficiency initiative that would mirror what Mass Save does in its comprehensiveness. And we have not done that yet. And so I don't have sort of historic or higher level looks at our energy efficiency initiatives, excuse me. But Dave, if you move to that year to date tab, I can show you what our energy efficiency program uptake looks like. So go back down to the bottom where it says, you'll see a heading energy efficiency right there. Okay, go back up. Oops. Go back up a little bit more. There you go. Okay. So we have a number of energy efficiency rebate programs available. We have a residential weatherization rebate, which is now available to all of our customers, regardless of fuel usage. And in 2020, we forecasted that we hoped that there'd be an uptake of 27 rebates. And in fact, there were 8. And what I've done here as well is on this tab, in addition to the uptake, I've also indicated the board was interested in our 2020 forecast, what we actually spent of that, and then the 2021 expenditure forecast is here as well for reference. The next program shown here is our LED bulb rebate program. This program has been declining in uptake over the last several years, as more and more people adopt LEDs as a matter of course. And also as we have installed LEDs, a number of years ago, we began installing LEDs as part of home energy assessments. And so instead of going out and buying their own LEDs and installing them, more people had been taking advantage of installation during a home energy assessment. Dave, do you want to, oops, okay, yeah. And that's here, LED bulbs installed during audits or home energy assessments. The number here is fairly low because home energy assessments have been done remotely for most of this year. Bulb installation was not being done. People were offered the opportunity to have bulbs delivered so that they could install them themselves. Most people have declined that offer. In 2019, just as a comparison, can you move up? Yeah. As a comparison, 2,500 LEDs were installed during home energy assessments in 2019. So that, and I think years before that, in the year before that, we might have had over 4,000 installed. So move down just a tiny bit, Dave. And this last program listed here is our commercial lighting program. For businesses, we had 3 businesses participate in the program this year. This is a drop. In past years, we've had between 9 and 15 businesses participate in this program. I think the drop this year has been partly due to the pandemic. We have not done a lot of promotion of this program in recent years. So why don't I stop there and ask the board what questions you have that we can answer.
Sorry
Alice,
about that. Yep. Sorry, that was for the benefit of the dog and all of you. Who has the first questions? I know I have a pile, and I'm sure that others on the board do too. So let's start with the board questions. Brian.
So RCS regulation, I don't know the status of it, but I believe it is to have MLPs report to the state about their conservation and renewable energy efforts. Is that a good template for a standard way of looking at all of our programs in this area? What do you think, Jan?
I can't answer that question at this point. They ask a lot of questions about how much money we're spending on. They ask questions about how much money we're spending on each program in terms of administration and marketing. It is also true that that ENE is providing information to them about how many energy how many home energy assessments are done, the breakdown of recommendations within them, I believe. And they are trying to make an effort. They're asking E&E to make an effort to tie who gets rebates for what to recommendations in audits, similar to what Mass Save does, where they try to tie those things together. So my focus has been on providing E&E with the information they've requested around the amount of money we're spending on each program and separated into marketing and administration. So I think we should look more closely at what E&E is providing to DOER and decide if that's a good standard way to look at things year over year.
The other question I had is, with the pandemic, I know that you have not been able to do a lot of the tabling at events and getting out in the community. I mean, the pandemic has many ways that it affects these kinds of programs. But do you see that in late 2021 and 2022 that you'll be able to get back to those programs, and that we should budget for a greater uptake then? Or is when there's going to be a bubble in budgeting, when do you think that might happen? And did that make sense?
Yeah, I think the big thing is we really got to, carefully take a look at the pandemic and the vaccines and, moving forward. So it's really hard to say, hey, late 2021, things are going to start to go back to normal. We don't know that. We're hoping, but I would be very cautious on giving you a timetable at this point. But, we are encouraged by the fact that the vaccine's out there and it's getting implemented at this point. We're really hopeful that, when we get to the 2022 budget, that things will be much more normalized.
You don't think there'll be a pent-up demand based on people waiting? No.
I don't know. We haven't given that a lot of thought. We haven't had a lot of time to really think about that. But
it's over a year away.
Yeah. I mean, early on in the pandemic, things kind of just shut down, and then people started doing some more things at their homes. But as you can see from the numbers that Jan's put out there, not nearly what we had hoped for. And, for us to, kind of forecast we're going to have a bursting bubble, I don't think we can do that at this point.
Okay.
Other
I'll let
questions?
other people ask questions.
Gordon.
I should know this because we've talked about it in budgets, but if we just had a top line number for the amount of money that we're spending in these related programs, this would be basically what we used to think of as the CARES budget, right? And I'm guessing that that's a couple of $100,000. Is that right?
No, it's over 600,000.
Okay. And then in a way, you could kind of put the money that we're spending on RECs conceptually in a similar box. I don't know if the board agrees with that comparison, but they're in the case of spending money on RECs, you are greening the power supply, and you can make the claim that the energy that we're spending is carbon free, right? And that's the half a cent per kilowatt hour, and that number. What does that? Dave? Do you recall what we're spending on RECs in a year?
Yeah. Obviously, the board changed that number recently, I think, and Laura probably can speak to it more effectively than I can, but I think it's around 1.5 million. Is that accurate?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's okay. The ballpark is fine, but it's interesting that we've got these and that they're similar orders of magnitude. We're spending more money on RECs, and actually we're not at 100% yet. So we're projecting higher spending on the REC side. I'll just leave I don't want to head any further down that line of comparison. I just wanted to bring that up, just to have that in people's mind, what we're spending on in this generally green area.
So I just want to clarify the numbers so everybody's on the same page. When the REC surcharge was a penny, we were spending about $1.65 million a year on RECs. You raised that to $0.015 on September 1st, 2020. And then the cost of service rates included another 0.5 cent increase effective January 1st. So there are now 2 cents embedded in rates for RECs. So we actually are projecting to spend 3.3 million on renewable energy. That could be either for RECs or for renewable energy contracts.
Thank you for the clarification, Laura.
Yep. So are there other questions from the board for Jan? Wendy?
Jen, I don't know if you have this answer, but in the strategic plan, we talked about some targets for just residential and commercial participation. And I think residential participation was 25%. Do you have any sense of where we are in that sort of goal?
I do not. I can certainly add up the numbers for you.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
it's
have that handy.
no, I appreciate. I didn't think you would actually have it. It's just it was in the strategic goal. So
True.
my focus on the goal is just where are we in those goals? So
Yep.
not
Good
critical,
question.
but just,
Yeah. Good question.
no, and you know it will be off anyways because of COVID. So it's fine.
But Wendy, to your point, we need to find some time for staff to go through the strategic plan and update it. It's been a couple of years at this time, so we'll bring that to the board at some point this year. But it is, I don't want to say it's overdue, but it's definitely due.
And I'm sure we're going to get to that in our next agenda item.
Are there other questions from board members for Jan?
Have you received, I mean, you when people get rebates and things, you usually get a lot of positive feedback. What kind of feedback have you received about people who didn't qualify or found the programs limiting? Have you had any of that kind of feedback? Because how could we improve the programs in how they're executed? Not necessarily funding them more, but what are some of the barriers people have expressed?
I mean, that's a tricky one, Brian, because this year, obviously, the barriers are pretty obvious, with the pandemic and whatnot. Jan kind of talked about the energy audits and doing it remotely and the LED installations. That really didn't happen this year. So it's tricky for us to say on that based on what we're experiencing currently.
One of the,
if you want to add to that,
one of the things I've heard is some people have considered going solar, but it is the shading requirement in the incentives that's disqualifying them. It's pretty much you have to have a shadeless roof to qualify for the DOER Cmlp incentive. And so people aren't installing solar because they don't get any incentive other than the federal tax credit, which is reducing. So things like that. I'd like to identify people who made an attempt to utilize these programs or go in the directions we're suggesting, but failed to do so for some reason in their analysis. Because that's how we can improve our programs, is identifying who are the people who wanted to do it but failed to because of reasons that unknown at this point.
Well, I'm going to ask that question slightly differently, and I think that's a good question. I'm concerned about looking at the numbers here of how we can ever reach scale. We're nibbling at each of these programs. I don't see here, maybe you've done it, is looked at what are the greenhouse gas reduction accumulations from these programs. But if we're going to get to scale, we need to really rethink how we do this. And maybe the coaches can help us. But in my mind, it would require a look at whether the incentives are the right ones at the right level. Do we, I know other MLPs are offering across the board numbers like $5,000 per air source heat pump installation. I don't know what we offer, but those numbers are looking really tiny. What are the drivers that get us to scale? Because without scale, we don't really have an impact. I'd be curious to understand how much market segmentation we've done. Do we know who has, the age of every vehicle, the rate of turnover for somebody buying a new vehicle based on the data that we have? What's happening in the market in the industry for, I think Volkswagen saying 80% of their new vehicles will be all electric, how that drives our future projections, not based on what we think, not what we think we can do based on, 38 cars this year or whatever those numbers are, but looking at the driving forces that engage people to make those decisions. And then I think that we need to understand, are all of the incentives having a return on investment to the light plant? So every time somebody puts in an air source heat pump, there's a benefit in the end for electrification, right? That means the initial costs that we put out to incentivize someone to make that change comes back over a period of time as a return on our investment in retail sales or residential sales. I'd love to see that analysis as part of our calculation of how we reach scale. It helps us decide how much we can invest in each one of these programs. It's disheartening to see so few uptakes on a lot of these programs. It does look like from your data that the solar incentives worked. The years where we had solar incentives, we had more rebates. We have more people putting in solar. So that leads me to ask the question, are we incentivizing in the right amount to drive that massive change that we need to do? Oh, that's not my dog, that's good.
Right, that was me.
So those are mine are sort of bigger questions of how are we ever going to reach scale if we're nibbling at these numbers right now? And scale is the only way we're going to have an impact on our town's greenhouse gas emissions and actually the global concerns. So I'm not going to ask a one-on-one question because I think they're way too big, but those are where I'm coming from of great to have these programs, but are they actually effective in helping the town meet its goals? I see I see all the hands up. So I think Gordon, Pam, Brian.
EV counting, maybe we could put a question in the annual town survey, the census. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Next.
Pam. You're on mute. Can you unmute, Pam?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not adding anything new. I just wanted to say that I think that Alice has captured, I'm very impressed with how Alice has captured key questions that I just want to encourage us to actually record those questions, some of which are, what are the greenhouse gas reductions? What's the return on investment? There were several questions which I think actually capture things that absolutely need to be addressed for us to look at this stuff well. So I'm just suggesting that that the minutes reflect the subsets of questions that Alice offered, and that I would recommend that those be on an agenda with the light board to start giving us answers on. I mean, I think she's just given us a really great, sort of frame for getting at some things that need to be answered. So thank you, Allison. Just please, let's make sure we look at those.
Thank you. I think Brian, you were next. And then I think Wendy had a question.
Yeah, so I have I've got a new little office here, and I've been digging through my files, and I came across a great memo that answers a lot of your question, and it even gave a template of how to evaluate these programs, including the social value, the carbon reduction, and the financial considerations. So I'm gonna scan this and send it back. But this was written by Jan back in July of 2015, and it's a great 6-page summary of evaluating programs. So I'll send this to the board, and hopefully we can I don't know, add it to the minutes, or we'll discuss it later. But no one's had a chance to read this recently, so
Yep.
I'll send it out.
Okay. Wendy, did you have a question? I think I saw your hand wave through. I think you're also on mute. If you could unmute yourself. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I just want to remind people that part of the rate setting was to make sure that our rates are meeting matching our costs. So that's contributing to the benefit to the ROI. But I think for me, the larger discussion is the strategic plan and balancing all of these. We need to look at all of them and figure out what the priorities are and what's changed. So I'll wait for the next agenda item.
Great. All right, I think we left more questions and answers. I think it's a really good summary. Jan, are you able to provide those spreadsheet highlights for us to just review and have in our files? Is that something you could add to our packet of stuff? Either email or give to Dave or post somewhere, or I'd love to have access to it just to review them more carefully.
I did send that to you, I believe, Dave.
Yeah, I have it. I can get it to you guys.
Great, that'd be perfect. All right. If there are no more specific questions on the incentive programs, our next goal, let's see, it's now 8:43. We're a little bit behind schedule. If we're going to keep on moving, I think we should move off this topic. Thanks, Jan, for coming and giving us this high overview of our incentive programs. I think we have a lot of evaluation work that we're talking about having to move forward with to figure out how we reach scale. But I really appreciate you coming in and giving us this overview. It's really helpful. The next item on our agenda is to look at our own light board goals. And I think I provided everybody with two sort of templates. One was just the high level thinking from the select board so that we can keep those in mind as the select board's overarching goals for themselves and for the town and how we might fit in. And the second document, and I think Wendy had suggested this as well, is to take a look at our strategic plan and see, and it sounds like we are going to move with updating the strategic plan at some point this year, but maybe that becomes one of our goals. So I think this board needs to have a working framework for what are we thinking are achievable goals for the light board and the light plant in this year, based on the documents that we have from both the select board and the light plant goals and the strategic plan rather. So I've asked everybody to take a little look at this beforehand so that we can have a targeted meeting discussion today. Hopefully that people have done some of that. And I'm wondering, let's start by looking at it occurred to me, and this is a conversation that started, I think it was, maybe it was Peggy or the previous board members who said it was time for us to look again at the mission statement of the strategic plan, because it seems to be, and I think I agree with this, lacking a driving force for where I think this board has talked about wanting to be in greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And so I'm wondering if other people took a stab at what this could look like as a change to our vision statement for the strategic plan. And are you willing to offer your thoughts on a revised mission statement? I have one, but I'm sure others have it as well. So if anyone want to take a stab at just saying, are we doing is our vision for the light plant in line with the light plant's vision as they have it here?
Excuse me, is the vision, I'm having trouble accessing a mission statement. Where is it?
It's the vision statement is part of the strategic plan.
No, are you?
I'm on page 2 of the strategic plan, says vision statement. It's a call out blue box.
So are you referring to the mission statement as the vision statement?
I'm looking at the vision statement because it's the call out.
Mission statement. So I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right.
I'm sorry, vision statement.
Okay, great.
So the vision of the light plant, because I think it's critical that we agree with what we think the light plant's vision is, to be able to then cascade down the goals that we see for what we can achieve and what we would expect the light plant to achieve in this year. Brian.
I think, the vision statement, I remember when this was written by the consultants, and it's not very, it's consultant speak, not Concord speak. We went through this with the climate plan where consultants really made a plan. It's something you can see in a lot of other plans around the nation, but it had to be Concordized because Concord does have these committees. We do have different views than standard. So I think I don't disagree with the vision statement. I think it's lacking. I think adding the idea that the core goal of this light plant is to provide clean, low-cost, reliable electricity. That's our goal. And those are in conflict, and we need to balance those. We have lots of discussions about what things are costing, whether, dispatchable energy for resilience, for renewables being, intermittent. There are many discussions around those three topics. I think that is what needs to be added to this vision statement. With Article 51 passing with a goal of non-emitting by 2030, that's not reflected in this vision statement.
Okay.
I will just, I really agree with what Brian's saying. And if the vision statement, which I did read, is that small snippet extracted on page 2, which I think is that the entire vision statement?
That's the highlighted vision statement. Yep.
Okay, I think it is woefully generic. I really agree with Brian's point about consultantizing everything. And if I looked at this, I wouldn't know what country I was even hearing from. So I think there needs to be work done to do many of the things that I think Brian described, and to make it at least say something that the public can hold its hands to, or can understand, and also to make it more specific to our needs and who we are. So I think a lot of work needs to be done on it.
Dave, do you mind if I share the strategic plan so others can read the vision statement?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this one, while you're pulling that up, Brian, since you added some thoughts here, I just took notes. Let me read this back and see if we're getting closer. Okay.
Okay.
Together with our customers and partners, Cmlp will provide a stronger, more vibrant community that aligns with community climate, sustainability, and resilience goals, providing a clean, reliable, safe energy source at a fair cost to all. Or maybe just a fair cost. Low cost, I'm not sure is the right term, but fair cost to me seems like the more relevant term, because I don't know that we should be driving for the lowest cost.
No, 'cause
I
it'll be
think actually
dollars.
fair cost is really an important upgrade there, as opposed to lowest.
Right, because we know it's going to cost us more.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Um,
so here we have aligning with our community goals for climate sustainability and resilience, providing safe, clean, reliable energy at a fair cost. Which we can wordsmith, but.
Yeah, I thought, Brian, I think that what you said was super helpful. Thank you for that. And it was interesting too that you pointed out that some of these aspects that you mentioned are in conflict with each other.
Correct.
And in a way, you have to embrace that. It's like it's part of the job. And sometimes it's useful to think about when there are conflicts, how you would find your way out of that conflict. Well, what would be, and I'll give you an example. When I was appointed to the light board, I was given a charge by Chris Whalen at the time, saying that I should, as a light board member, think about rates and be an advocate for ratepayers, but that I'd also have in the back of my mind taxes, and that I'd also think about how the two of those would conflict with each other. I don't really have the statement in my mind, but that was an example of how you can actually recognize in a charge that there are conflicting goals, and that acknowledging that also is an opportunity to think about how you would balance those. And I don't think that we can necessarily change these words to capture all that. I think we were trying to do that just a moment ago with introducing the word fair pricing rather than low pricing.
I understand the desire to use the word fair, but I think we are striving for low cost, because to talk about adoption at scale. We need to keep electricity, and we need to keep it, we need to clean the electricity while keeping it the lowest cost energy source. That's how we reach scale. So I think, Alice, your revised statement sounds good. I think that we do need to add in that instead of saying conflict, finding a balance in delivering these three pillars of our vision, because if we fair cost could just mean that I'm taking a counter view. Someone could read that and say, oh, they'll just charge us whatever it costs and do clean energy at 50 cents a kilowatt hour all the time. That's not going to work, because people will go to carbon heavy fuels like natural gas and others if the price goes too high. But we do need to clean, and that's missing in this vision statement. It is very much a priority for Concord. So
I think the one thing that I just want to point out, and I think everyone knows this, is Brian's referring to low cost. We know that every clean contract has a premium. We're paying more for it. And we also are collecting 2 cents in the energy charge for REC. So I understand what Brian's saying about low, but we're not buying the cheapest energy we can.
Right.
We're trying to buy the cleanest energy we can at a reasonable price.
Well,
Okay.
maybe that's the word. It's reasonable. I mean, because I agree that we shouldn't use the word lowest, because it's not going to be. It's
Or
about-
even low. I'm not sure low
Right.
is our goal,
Right.
because
It's reasonable.
it's
right. Finding a
reasonable, it's
balance
fair.
That's the conflict. Right.
I
So,
mean,
I
in the
mean,
rate,
so-
in the rate
so-
comparison, charts, we've been just a little
Target.
50%. We're going to be going higher and higher each year
Yep.
as we clean the power supply. And I think it's important for the board to recognize that, because you are the rate setting authority, but we're also doing a heck of a lot more than others. And that's why we're up there. And
Yep.
I think, we just need to be transparent about that.
Well, and as we see other light plants being brought into a regulatory framework where they have to meet a clean energy supply by 35 or whatever the date was, other light plant costs will also go up as they try to buy more green power. So those are not our comparisons. Our competitors are also not static. They are changing. Gordon.
I'd bring in the word value, that by greening our portfolio, we're actually offering a different value for that kilowatt hour than our competitors or the other MLPs that haven't taken those steps.
Okay. Okay, we have some good, yeah, Pam?
Alice, I just want, can we have, can you send this to us and can we talk about it more, or else could we put, I mean, it's very difficult to
Right.
do this, just having heard what you said. And these are important concepts. So I mean, I don't see how we can do this without having a straw draft and then having a conversation with the benefit of the draft.
So I think that's right, but let's look at two things. I think if we look at we should talk a little bit about our goals as a board.
Right.
So one of the goal I think that Wendy had introduced, at least at the last meeting, was the idea that it's time for us to look at the strategic plan and to update it. And you're right, starting today with rewriting it in a board meeting is a very difficult place to start the conversation. But I wanted us to look at the vision and say, I think this vision needs to be updated as the starting point of the conversation. And I'm hearing that there's agreement that that has to happen. How we do that, it's not going to be wordsmithing in this meeting. We certainly don't have the time to do that in the next 10 minutes that we have allotted.
Well, so that's
So
basically you're stopping this little exercise, which is what I was hoping you would do, because it's just not productive. So good, thank you.
but I'm going to suggest, go ahead, Wendy.
No, I was going to say, so it seems pretty clear that one of our goals is to focus on how to, updating
Yes.
the strategic plan, which obviously we can't do with updating this team.
So
We have some work to do first.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
that's exactly what I would have suggested, that one of our major goals this year will be to review the strategic plan and to update it relevant to where we are moving as a board and as a light plant and as a community structure. So that also leads into the conversation about what are our other goals going forward. And so here's what I would do. I would urge, well, let's see. The strategic plan was prepared by E&E with a lot of input from staff and community.
It was a
not-
consultant.
Right.
Oh, okay, a consultant.
Yeah.
Presented at a forum to the community. There was some feedback, there was some changing, and it's been updated more than once, I believe. So the question is, do we go back to a consultant for this upgrade? Do we have our, what is the best way to move forward to make this more relevant to us? Because the goals that we set for this year would change, I think, the order and structure of the goals that are written in here. For customer service, I'm looking at each one of these goals on page 3, and each one can be updated as our goal statements for what we would do this year as well.
So typically we would, the staff would update the strategic plan. That's what we're planning on doing. We bring it to the board, get feedback, adjust, but normally it's done internally with the staff.
And then just to go back to goals, I'm still struggling with, there was a recent meeting with a climate change group that Dave, you and Laura went to, which I thought was a great presentation, that the board needs to understand our role in supporting that longer strategy. And I would like some more information on how our plan on meeting that, right? So if we have a target, do we have any sense of how we're going to get there and our role in that, which I think, Alice, is what you're getting to.
Yep.
But maybe we want to exceed that goal. I'm not sure. That's a different question. But
Right.
I need to make sure that we're supporting the goal and what that goal is and we're clear. I don't know if that's different from the strategic plan or not.
What goal are you, to what goal are you referring?
The town's overall the overall reduction and the
Article
CMLP
51.
Right, for 51, in our role, we have milestones in the strategic plan. Well, I don't know if it's actually in the strategic plan. In the CMLP one, but
So I think you're referring to, I'm going to build on that comment, because
Okay.
this strategic plan and the framework for it was done in 2017 while the Energy Futures Task Force
Right.
was working, and both were, the report from EFTF and this were published at the same time. Since then, we have a director of sustainability, we have a greenhouse gas inventory for the town, and we have a climate action plan, which one of 5 of the elements of that plan, a major section, is about energy. And I know that during the process of that planning, work with the municipal teams was quite extensive. I would like to see an update to the light plant strategic plan done by staff that reflects those changes that have been agreed to in the climate plan, so that they're in alignment. I fear a long process of working with a consultant to redraft this, because I want to get to the actions. I want to see these things done rather than organized again. So I very much agree the strategic plan needs updating, and I would like it informed by the climate plan and other actions that have happened in the last 3 years.
Right.
So just to Brian's point, I mean, the plan for us was to do it internally anyway, not to bring in a consultant to redo
Okay.
what's already been done. We have the framework. We certainly have the professional staff that can modify it and align things where we think they should be. But the plan was to do that internally, and that hasn't changed. So
Okay.
that's.
And one final thing, there is the 2010 memo from the light plant about solar installations for the utility. And there's also a 2011 renewable energy plan. I think those also need to be revisited and incorporated into this strategic plan so that they can all be in alignment with our vision.
I
I
think,
don't think we know, I don't know
All-
those memos you're referring to from 2020.
yeah, both of those actions that were taken back in 2011, those those are way out of date.
And that's why I think they need to get reviewed and incorporate, and those ideas need to be thought of again and considered for this.
And that's something that was a board initiative to implement those, and the board certainly can review those and modify them and make them more current. So I will say both of those documents, there was a big lift, a lot of work on the board. So, you know, if that's what the board chooses to do to review those, I would suggest that be done. They're out of date, and if someone goes on to read them, they don't align with where we are and what we're doing, but it is a big lift.
I guess I'd like to see what those memos are. I'm unfamiliar with them, but they seem to be going on 10 years old.
I'll send out a link with the information.
Okay, that'd be great. Gordon.
Thank you, Alice, for sending out the select board's goals. And it's interesting, that is a starting point that's a lot broader than the starting point of just looking at the current draft, well, the current accepted copy of the light plants strategic plan, because it actually covers all of the town. And it covers issues that are absolutely not in the existing plan. There's not enough time for me to go over all of the thoughts that I have about those goals, those high level goals, and how they could possibly roll out and roll down onto an organization or a board like ours. But some of the highlights would be thinking about governance and how does a board like ours do a good job? What are the kinds of skills that a select board members ought to try to have in order to be effective? And I'll tell you guys that I've been a pretty active member of or participant in MCAN, which is a green-oriented environmental group that has these Muni summits. And part of the reason why I've been as interested in that is it's an opportunity for me to meet other board members from other towns and talk and just find out what's going on and what matters to those boards. And and in a way, that contact, that I wouldn't call it training, but that exposure is a step towards filling in that gap that I feel like I have in my preparation for being as effective as I can be at this job. So it's just something to think about. And there's risks to try and solidify that in a set of policies, because you could actually take away individual growth and individual perspective if you try and institutionalize some of this training or some of this knowledge. But it's just something to think about. What would a board member really need to know and understand in order to be effective at their job?
Mm-hmm. Good questions. I think that these are two instrumental documents for us to spend some time with. And it sounds like the light plant staff will be looking at the strategic plan. And I think for our specific goals for the year, updating the strategic plan should be up there. And I think Wendy's right on that, that be one of our board's goals, is to see that we update the strategic plan and maybe take a look at the select board goals and figure out what we can do to provide effective, responsive, transparent governance. We know that the feedback has been stupendous when Laura and Dave have done presentations to the CAB and to the select board, that people really want to know what's happening, and that we have an obligation in some ways to figure out the ways that we can communicate better to our citizens about our power supply and our rates. And I think both of those conversations were extraordinarily well received. So how we do that is part of transparency in governance. We should think about that as one of our goals for this year. So we are not going to be able to actually write our goals in this meeting, but I want you all to think about it. And what if you have thoughts about goals for the light board, send them to me individually. I will take the responsibility of putting together your ideas in basically a list of goals for our board that I can bring back to the meeting. I'll send it out in advance. If you don't have any, that's fine, but I think you probably all have ideas of things that we should be working on this year, and see if we can put together our own list of goals for what we'd like to accomplish as a board. And I'll put together the compendium for us to review at the next upcoming meeting. Does that sound like the right approach? Yeah.
It does. And Alice, I just want to remind us, so these goals are for the remainder of this term, right, through June?
Yeah.
And maybe we should consider the following year as part of that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would,
I think that's right.
yeah, I suggest that we think of a list of goals and give some kind of priority order to help kind of organize those. I know my list of goals is going to take at least 3 to 5 years to figure out. So it's going to be long, and I'll section out which ones I think this year we should focus on.
And I think it's fair to assume that because that we're not talking about a full year ahead of us, is looking at multi-year goals. Like AMI strategy is a multi-year goal, but it's way up there, I think, on our agenda item, and I know it is for the light plan, but it's not a 1 year or 6 month goal.
Right. So that strategy is going to give us a multi-year set of goals. So most of those multi-year goals should be in that strategy, I'd like to think.
Yeah.
So
thank you for starting this conversation with me. I think it's an important one for us to have. Why I'm going to ask that if you would think about it in the next few weeks, send me your ideas of your top goals for this board and for the light plan. I'll put together that document for us to look at it and send it out before our next meeting. Sound like the right approach?
Great.
Okay, great. We are getting back on schedule. The next is a conversation, a brief conversation about our the changes in our rates in the last year or more. I think that Laura we had this on the agenda for a previous meeting and didn't get to it. So Laura, if you could walk us through the changes in rates that have occurred most recently, and if you have a long view of what we can expect in the next few years in terms of additional rates that we'll have to be addressing as a board.
Okay, sure. Let me try to share my screen here. There we go. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, so this is a quick snapshot of the most recent couple of years board action on electric rates. So these are rate impacts that the board has voted on. The first really one of consequence happened in early 2017, where we saw capacity costs increasing, and we subsequently determined we needed to increase rates by about $0.0125 to cover those costs. So that happened in early January. We also increased the meter fee from $6.80 to $9 for residential and small commercial customers.
Laura, can I interrupt for 1 second? If we
Yes,
could
ma'am.
all mute, there's some background noise that I'm getting, it's distracting. I can't quite hear Laura. If we would all go on mute for this presentation, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, it actually might be me, so hang on a second. Even though I'm on a headphone, my kid is having a remote Zoom class in the next room, so I think it's contributing to the noise. Is this any better? Okay.
Much better, thank you.
Okay, so we also raised the meter fee in 2017. In 2018, this was not a rate increase or decrease, but rather a change in methodology of allocating distribution costs to general service customers with solar. We used to, well, I'm not going to go into the details, but it didn't impact rates. It did increase distribution fees slightly for those general service net metered customers. In September of 2018, we implemented the first renewable energy surcharge. It was $0.01. In 2019, we implemented a revenue neutral meter fee increase. The residential and small commercial meter fee went from $9 to $12. The volumetric charges were at the same time decreased. So it was not a rate increase, but rather a change in allocation methodology. In September, we didn't then have anything happen rate-wise until September of 2020. when the board voted to increase the renewable energy surcharge from a penny to a penny and a half. So it was another 0.5-cent increase. And then, of course, in January of this year, all the rates changed as a consequence of the cost of service study that was conducted in 2020. In general, the rates here, there was not a big need to increase or decrease rates. I don't know if you all recall when we were looking at the revenue requirement, rates were almost exactly collecting what we needed to run the plant. So we didn't need a big general rate increase, but there were some changes to which customer classes paid what. We did reduce small general service rates, and we did increase the meter fee again. So there, again, some smaller customers may pay more while larger customers pay less, but it wasn't a general rate increase to be thought of like the one in January of 2017 was, when we clearly needed to raise more money to pay for capacity. So that's a quick summary of the rate changes that have occurred over the last 3 years. Alice, you asked about what the board is going to need to think about. And I think the two big ones that come to mind are, as we move towards being able to offer a time of use rate to all of our customers because of implementation of smart meters system-wide, the board needs to really think about what they want to offer for a time of use rate. Back in December, the light plant recommended new time of use rate structure. There was a lot of discussion at the time about it and some differences of opinion about how it should be structured. So it seems like that conversation about how the board wants the time of use rate to look probably needs some more vetting from you all. And in particular, as we look to have all customers on a time of use rate, we need to think carefully about our net metering policy. As you all may be aware, net metering, there's a conversation going on, nationwide and even worldwide about how to structure net metered rates and whether or not the current model of offering full retail compensation for solar production is financially viable in the future. So that's a discussion the board needs to have and think about. And then within the solar net metering discussion, you'll need to focus specifically on, well, how does time of use affect that net metering compensation? For example, do we want to pay solar customers a higher price for energy that is sent to the light plant during the day when energy is generally worth more, and then offer them a lower price to consume energy at night, which, other than the evening peak, in the middle of the night is generally at a lower price. So those three items, I think, are really going to be what the board needs to focus on going forward.
That's very helpful to think about. To help tee that up for the board, if you would, I know you read a lot of trade articles. If you see things that you think would be relevant to our thinking, if you would share that with the board so that we can sort of keep this on the, I know that there's a learning curve for most of us about time of use rates implementation and then the net metering policies that we could enact. So if you see things that are of relevance to us, I'd love to see them at least.
I can do that.
Brian, you have a question. Unmute, please. Unmute, please.
Forgot we all muted.
Yeah.
So that's very much a priority for me, is to figure out a time of use rate that is inclusive of solar. I know I have 2 meters on my house because I have EVs and I have solar, and they're not compatible. I know that Gordon has mentioned before that he has a heat pump and a rate for that heat pump, and it's not compatible with solar. I'm hoping that the time of use rate can replace many of these incentive rates we have. I would ideally like to see us, because at one point this light plant had like 34 different rates, many of them related to special technology. I think the time of use rate should fairly price electricity for when it's consumed, so that there is no direct incentive for a technology, but there is an incentive for the result in shifting load. That way, that's how we save money on transmission and capacity. I'm excited to do that work. I also, back in March of 2019, gave a presentation about time of use, and I've talked to Alice, and I'd like to have the opportunity to talk about that again to help educate the board on the thinking that I suggested back then.
Thank you. Laura, you're on mute though. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
Just wanted to mention that as you guys are thinking about your strategic goals, and in particular, Alice, you mentioned needing to find the right incentives to incentivize the carbon reduction goals we need. So for example, improving the adoption of heat pumps. As we go in the direction Brian's talking about, which is eliminating rates for special technologies, we'll have to think about, again, it's sort of a competing idea here where you're trying to achieve one thing over here, but are you reducing your effectiveness in another area that you've identified as a goal? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Good point. Thank you. I don't want us to get into a full discussion now about what those future rate discussions will be. I wanted us to be aware of the learning curve that some of us will have in being able to make good, smart decisions when the time comes. So I don't want to get in too deep into what those decisions are going to be in the future, but keep us in looking forward for what our job will be this next year. All right. Any further questions for Laura? If not, we'll move on to citizen comments, unless we have liaison reports. Does anybody want to? No? All right, let's open this for public comment. I'm going to see if I see a bunch of hands up. Let's see if I can get them open. Come on, hands. All right. I'm going to take it from the order in which I see them on my list here. Carlin Reed has her hand up.
Hi, this is Carlin Reed from 83 Wits End. I wanted to let you know that I'm really glad you're going to be updating the strategic plan. Looks like the last time it was updated was June of 2018, so things have changed. Glad you're looking at it. One question, where do we currently stand on our greenhouse gas emissions reduction program? That's it.
Okay. I'm not sure we're ready to respond to that entirely. It's a conversation we have at each of our meetings as we look at our power supply. And that's part of the discussion of why we were looking at the incentive programs today to see whether they are achieving the goals that we wanted to achieve. Do you have anything to add to that, David?
No, I mean, I can't answer that currently. I don't have the information right in front of me. We can get it and we can get Carlin an answer on that, but
Okay.
I can't do that at present.
Okay, great. Next question is from David Allen.
Now I'm unmuted. Looking back to the chair's clarion call to move away from nibbling around the edges in the reduction of greenhouse gases to going to scale, I think the best way to put it is right on. I do hope that sees us in the future looking to do precisely that. Just to check another matter, effectively a mechanical matter, the new 844 number, is that for all outages or just in the evening? And if it's not for all, what's the routine? What do we need to learn here?
So it's for after hours and weekends. The contract does allow us to utilize them during emergencies during the day if need be, if we have an overflow of calls, but ideally we're using it nights and weekends.
So we still call the 318, what is it, 344-300 number?
The 3400 is the police department. We're trying to get people away from calling dispatch. I don't know, Carol, if you want to add anything. You were completely involved, so.
Yeah, We have done our first pass at marketing. There were bill inserts with a January bill on after hours, as well as using Smart Hub to report outages. But during the day, you would call the 978-318-3101 phone number. And for February bill inserts, we do plan another insert that shows the different ways that you can report outages and at any given point of the day, whether it's during business hours or after hours. Both the town and CMLP's Twitter account, we sent out a notification on Friday with the number. And we also had NISC reprogram our billing template to include this number. And if you were to look on your bill, it's in the upper left-hand corner, right where the message center is located. And let's see what else. The web page is also updated at the same location where the outage map is. And I think that's about it. David, did you have any other questions? The other thing you could do is email us at the Concord Utilities at concordma.gov.
That's very helpful. I really appreciate the review. And I think, Carol, you are illustrating the challenge in getting word out. And let me reflect back on that, since I'm not somebody who looks at the bill for whatever reason. I'm representative of probably 60, 70% of the citizens in town who don't see those things. It just emphasizes what you're pointing at, which is a challenge in getting the word out there. Personally, I appreciate hearing. Finally, completely mechanical matter, but this morning's experience with the Zoom has had it contained to a single monitor. Yes, most of the folks who are on single monitors. Some of us are not, some of us on dual monitors. And in other Zooms, very usefully use both monitors for reasons you can imagine. I don't know whether you have choices in that, or it has to do with what Zoom has put into my app. I don't know. But if you have choices in that regard, I encourage thinking about whether or not you can enable that dual. Thanks so much, as always.
Thank you. The last hand I see is Pamela Dritt. Good morning, Pamela.
Good morning. Thank you, Pamela, 13 Concord Green. Thank you, you guys. You're really going for the important issues. And I would like to know if goals can include a couple of them to electrify everything as a goal, and to incentivize solar, because the costs of developing clean energy infrastructure have to be paid. We've already paid the cost of developing carbon infrastructure systems, and we have to switch from those. So anything we can do to incentivize solar means that is infrastructure that the town as a whole doesn't have to pay, because the individual people are paying for it. So we should definitely, the costs of doing this are going to be higher at the beginning, but then they're going to get lower. As the infrastructure is installed, the cost of the electricity itself will get lower. And people don't realize that. So we need to keep in mind that our cost goals should not go for what is cheapest at this specific time, but how we get from where we are now to the future of clean energy that will be cheaper in the most financially gradual and effective way. And as for that, when we do our infrastructure, the smart meters and the time of use and the things that we need to do for that, can we make sure that we provide a financial disincentive for analog and other infrastructure that doesn't give us the information that we need to have to achieve the future goal? And that is because people resist change unless it clearly benefits them personally. And if you are allowed to stay in the way we've always done it, people will. And smart meters really only benefit the community as a whole. And there are two significant concerns people have. One is privacy. And I think that horse has left the barn, but most people don't. And the other is safety. And those may or may not be valid concerns for RFD stuff, but they're definitely influential. However, when people have to think of a financial trade-off for these concerns, it makes a big difference in their actual decisions, especially people who aren't really concerned with it. So
Okay, thank you.
will there be a wired option for using our cable system for getting the information? I think that's really important. It eliminates the safety concerns and the privacy, most of the privacy concerns.
Thank you for your comments. I see no further hands raised at the moment. It is now 9:28. We did it. I will entertain a motion to adjourn if we don't have anything further that needs to be discussed.
I move to, oh wait, Wendy moves to adjourn.
I thought I heard her say that, but she was on mute.
Well, I saw Brian, so I was seconding.
Oh,
Okay.
All right, so wait, we have Wendy moving, Brian seconding. I'll take a roll call vote. I'll go around
Oh, yeah.
my screen, starting with Brian,
aye.
Wendy,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Pam, Alice, yes. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Good discussion.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Thanks.